Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, we're going to be kicking it old school. People don't say that anymore, I don't think. Anyways, we're going to be unleashing the potential of old school Magic cards. People do say that. I guess at least I am right now. We're going to be talking about some hidden gems, maybe ones that you've never seen before. And these cards, well, are quite powerful, quite out there, quite unique. Let's jump into it. Now, I will mention that if I haven't said this already, I don't think. If you are interested in any of these cards, check out that card list link in the description below. Make sure you pick up some of them because, well, Island Sanctuary is a doozy. The way we're going to go about this, apparently Moxfield decided that we're going based off of color identity. So there you go. Island Sanctuary is an enchantment for 1 in a white. During your draw phase, you may draw one last card from your library. If you do so until start of your next turn, the only creatures that can attack you are those with flying around the walk. This is weirded. This is worded in the weirdest way. There we go. We got there. Essentially what this means is, hey, you can skip your draw on your turn, and if you do that, you can't be attacked by basically ground creatures, because back then Island Walk was a thing. So essentially, hey, no one come through at me except for flyers in Island Walk, and no one plays Island Walk in Commander. So basically this is... no one can attack me but flyers. So kind of like a Sandworm Convergence, but at 2 mana instead of, what is it, 8? Essentially. And you don't get the worm things or whatever, and you don't get to draw cards. But once you're set up properly, if you have your like little Pillow Fort ready to go, and you've got your card draw engines online, or at least card draw spells, yeah, you can sit back and just say, everyone just go attack each other. It's a very weird, very, very, very effective card. I love it in my Feldergriff deck. It's $1.95 right now. It was even cheaper back in the day when I started with Feldergriff. I think it was like 25 cents or so. Regardless, a very, very spicy old card that, again, is definitely a hidden gem. Let's move on, though. Martyr's Cause, 97 cents, right underneath my $1 requirement for many of my decks out there. Martyr's Cause is an enchantment for 2 and a white. Sacrifice a creature, prevent all damage to a creature or player from one source. This is a very strange card. Typically, when it comes to Sacrifice Outlet, you think of black. Maybe red, like Goblin Bombardment. You don't think of, actually in green too, greater good. Blue, not thinking about any in blue. Regardless, you definitely don't think of mono white. And my goodness, is this such a good effect. Again, you are mono white, which means that you have access to many ways to make many tokens. In fact, if I had to pick a color, mono white is the one that goes the widest, the quickest, essentially. Green's very good at it too, but white more so. And also, Aristocrat style decks absolutely love that value from white too. And essentially now you're like, you know what? Let's just add another free sacrifice outlet to the mix. A fantastic one at that. Yeah, sign me up for that. Mono white free sacrifice outlet. Loveliness. Absolutely a fantastic thing. Martyr's Cause. And yeah, being able to prevent the damage. I didn't even talk about that. Being able to prevent the damage from a source just makes it so that your opponents are going to be less likely to come after you, because I'm like, oh, well, I could attack that player over there. If I attack that player, they're just going to sacrifice that tiny little 1/1, and it's going to just prevent this damage from this giant thing that I'm swinging with. Also, keep in mind, this does prevent from any sources as well. So it could be like, a Blasphemous Act, those kinds of things too. So keep that in mind. Moving on. Orm's Prayer. Yet another enchantment. This one, a little more typical, I would say, in mono white when it comes to what it does. Not like sacrificing creatures, but gaining life. That being said, the potential of this is crazy. Jam for 3 mana, 1 white. If any creatures attack you, gain 1 life for each attacking creature. This is a good attack deterrent, or kind of like an attack limiter in a way. Being able to gain life, again, different instances of life gain for creatures attacking you, that can just be a great thing on its own, because there's certain effects that are like, hey, double up each instant of life gain. Lovely. More importantly, though, hey, yeah, you got your little army of tokens out there. We just talked about that. Well, 1/1s, yeah, they're not coming at me. Because, again, essentially, your opponent, if they swing it with 1/1s, nothing's coming out of that. If they swing it with 2/2s, cool, congratulations. You swung with an army of 2/2s. I'll take half the damage. This can just be a great way, again, especially in life gain strategies, obviously, to gain a ton of life, to prevent your opponents from attacking you, a good Pillow Fort type card. Moving on. This one I will say is pretty specific, but pretty crazy. Penance. We don't really see this kind of effect ever. Enchant for 2 and a white, choose a card from your hand and put that card on top of your library. Prevent all damage from a black or red source. It's very strange, but very effective. It is one that says, hey, you know what? Putting things on top of our library is super easy. And there are certain cards out there, like to be on the top of your library, that like to, You manipulate the top of your library. You can do some pretty crazy things with this. And yeah, just kind of also just, you know, preventing black and red sources is pretty interesting with that too. But yeah, it's just one of those cards that's just off the wall. There are certain texts out there that are like, yes, please let me set the top of my library. Thank you. You know, you get miracles, those kinds of things as well. But yes, there's a lot of really cool effects like this. No, there aren't. There aren't many at all that are like set the top of your library. Like brainstorm type effects, sure, in blue. But like when it comes to a repeatable type effect like this, very unique, very interesting. Moving on to the next color. Next up, let's move on to blue with a very weird old card, Vanishing. Now, phasing is coming back kind of in small little baby steps, but this is a card that is a really cool one. Vanishing is enchant creature for a single blue mana and aura. Pay blue, blue, the enchant creature phases out. Now, this can help you out in many ways. It's actually a pretty flexible card because, yeah, typically your deck revolves around a certain thing called your commander that you want to protect. And essentially, hey, phasing is a great way to do that. You put this on your commander, you pay blue, blue, it's gone until it's back, which is on your turn. It's basically like you treat it again like it's there, but it's not there, so nothing falls off of it. Counters, auras, equipment, everything stays on, and all of a sudden, it just comes back. It just, poof, where'd it go? Oh, sheesh. Oh, Frank, where'd you go? Oh, you came back. Okay, cool. So being able to essentially protect your commander, or again, another important piece, from a board wipe or just removal repeatably with this is fantastic. Also, you can really mess with your opponents with something like this by throwing it onto one of their creatures. And they're being like, well, they got this really good blocker, but I don't like it right now. I'm going to pay blue, blue. It's going to phase out. Your opponents be like, my creature's gone. And then they're gone too. So yeah, it's a very interesting old card. Moving on. Mana Severance. Now, this is one that I loved in my Joy deck when I used to play that deck. And then I realized that many people don't like playing against Artifact Storm because I take 30 minutes at a turn. Anyways, Sorcerer for 1 and a blue. Search life for any number of land cards, remove them from the game. Shuffle your library afterwards. This is not for every deck out there. But when it comes to deck thinning, it's hard to beat this type of effect. My goodness. For 2 mana, you can say, let's get rid of all the dead cards. Because at a certain point, let's all be honest, okay? Unless you're in, like, you know, a ramp deck where you're like, hey, landfall, cool, all right, more lands, more lands, more lands. Lovely. You kind of don't want to draw a land later in the game. So being able to just pay 2 mana and say, let's never have that happen again is quite nice. Especially in a format, and this is just kind of something with Rule 0 as well, depending on the playgroup. You're not going to see your, like, Armageddons, so you're not going to get punished for just being like, yeah, okay, I already have 10 lands in play. That's, like, all I need, so let's get rid of all the other lands. And then someone just casts an Armageddon and you have no lands, and you can never get a land again. It's not going to happen. In your casual Commander games, that does not happen. So, therefore, you're fine to get rid of every single one of your lands from your deck. Congratulations. Moving on. Trade routes. Yes, please. This card is incredible. Wizards, reprint it. Enchantment for 1 and a blue. Pay 1, return a land you control back to its owner's hand. Pay 1, discard a land from your hand, draw a card. First up, landfall strategies. Love this because you always have a land drop. Every single time you want a land drop, you get a land drop. If you can play a land for the turn, but you don't have one in your hand, you're like, what do I do? Tap my land for mana, use that mana to bounce it back to my hand, replay my land, get my landfall triggers again. Congratulations. Also, hey, you know what's not good to draw again, like we just talked about? Lands, typically later in the game, unless you're in a landfall deck. Regardless, being able to just pay a single mana to basically cycle your lands. This is basically what this is. It's like every single one of your lands has cycling for 1. Yeah, if that was just on this card and not the other part, that would still be very good. Regardless, again, late game, if you're like, I've got so many lands in play, but like nothing to do, I'll pay 2 mana in total, like tap my land, tap another land, bounce one of my lands back to my hand, discard it, draw a card. You basically replace and churn through your lands essentially to ensure that you can get better cards that are more useful for you at that time. An incredibly good card. Next up, this one has actually been reprinted. This shows the $10 version because it's the old version. Their new versions are like 25 cents. Anyways, Borrowing 100,000 Arrows. Weirdest name for a card ever. There's more weird. But anyways, Source for 3 mana. For each tap creature your opponent has in play, you draw a card. It's worded weirdly, but basically, hey, how many tap creatures does that player have? Choose one of them. You get to draw that many. So being able to draw an absurd amount of cards with this can be great. Again, especially in like maybe like a forced combat strategy or again like a Pelifort strategy where you can like, they're like, you go attack over there. Cool. Ha ha ha. Here's some hippos, Feldergriff. Anyways, and then you're like, oh, cool. You have 9 creatures that are tapped. I'll draw 9 for 3 mana. Thank you. Theft of Dreams is also another one. Actually, do I have that one in here? Nope, didn't include that one. Include that one as well. There you go. Theft of Dreams is the exact same thing. Moving on. Insight. This is a very interesting card and one that, yes, can be risky, but could also be very, very rewarding. So, enchantment for 3 mana in total. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a green spell, draw a card. Basically what this means is it's not target opponents. Whenever an opponent cast a green spell, this is maybe for multiplayer, really, you get to draw a card. Now, is this risky because, yeah, there's a chance that someone might not be playing green at your table out of your opponents? Yes, but can you think about the last time when one player wasn't playing green? No, I can't. Basically, again, green is one of the, in my opinion, higher-end colors when it comes to Commander because ramp is king in Commander and green is king of ramp. So green sees a ton of play. It's the most popular commanders out there are green. And essentially, let's just think about the other end of the things, right? On this end of the bell curve, you have no one's playing green, which is low percentage chance. And you don't get to draw any cards with this. It's useless. On the other end of the bell curve, hey, everyone else is playing green, and I'm drawing an absurd amount of cards. It's like Ristic Study Plus, because there's no, like, option for them to pay one man to be like, no, you can't draw that. No, you're drawing cards. In the middle, it's like, yeah, one or two players are playing green. You're drawing some cards with this. It can be very, very, very good for you. Most likely, like, 2+. Anyways, moving on. War Tax, a very interesting card for just 83 cents. Enchant for 3 mana. Pay X in a blue. Creatures can't attack this turn unless control pays X for each attacking creature. This is a card where it's like, kind of like a weird ghostly prison where it's not always active and you do have to pay to make it active, but that active amount is variable in that you can say, oh yeah, I'm really good at generating a lot of mana. I may have a Simic deck or whatnot, essentially, and I can say, you know what, no one's a threat this table except for that guy, and I don't want to get attacked by that guy. So on your turn, how many creatures you got? How much mana do you got? Okay, I'll put 5 mana into this. You pay 4 for each creature you're gonna attack with me with. They're not going to do it. They're not going to be swinging at you. Like, if they have, like, one, like, Blightsteel Colossus, sure, but other than that, it's going to be like, yeah, I'll deal with you later. Now I'm going to go freely swing at that player. No, you can't, because creature can't attack at all. You actually gain friends with this. You can make buddies with this. You can say, hey, look, Ghostly Prison's a selfish card. That just protects me. I'm playing a card that protects all of us, all right? That player's the problem. I'm going to say, you know what will you do with me if I, what will you do for me if I pay 4 so they can attack us? Cool, I'll do that. You make friends, you politic, and you also prevent players from getting to you later in the game as well. It's a very, very, very fun card. Next up, Dream Tides. Enchantment for 2 blue. Creatures don't untap during control's untap phase. Each non-green creature controlled may pay additional 2 during an upkeep to untap that creature. This is kind of a Staxy card, so be careful with this one with the right play group. Don't play with every play group. It is a card that is pretty interesting, pretty old. It is technically not shutting things down unless you're playing a mono green deck that has creatures that come to play tap, then they can't do anything with that. That being said, everyone can just like choose to untap their creatures. It costs money to do so, mana to do so. Regardless, it's an interesting old card. Next up, Statecraft. This one is crazy. Enchantment for 4 mana. Prevent all combat damage to be dealt to and dealt by creatures you control. Basically, my creatures are useless for damage purposes. It does not matter. I can do whatever I want with them. It does not matter. What does matter is, hey, you also can't do anything to my creatures. Your combat damage does nothing. So if you swing at me, I'm just going to block and be like, boop, they bounce off each other. So this one is very good for a defensive type strategy, and especially one that maybe has like, hey, you can block with any number of, or this can block any number of creatures. It's like an ultimate wall kind of thing, which is quite fun. Next up, oh goodness, this one's quite expensive, but I just need to point it out because it's a very weird old card, and Eddie utilizes it incredibly well in Unash. Sphinx Tribal is incredibly deadly. Don't sleep on Sphinx Tribal. If you're playing against it, look out, especially Eddie's. Dream Hall's enchantment for 5 mana. Instead of paying the cast cost for a spell of any color, its caster may choose to discard a card. Choose at least one color of that spell. The spell has 0, or X's cast cost is 0. Very weirdly worded, but basically get rid of a card that shares a color and then cast the other one for free. Brokenly good. Kind of like a mini Omniscience in a way, but with like card disadvantage. But still, if you have things that generate advantage, like an Eddie Unash deck, hey, you play a Sphinx, you get Factor Fiction, basically. Cool, get more cards. Okay, play another Sphinx for free with this, essentially. Do it again, and again, and again. Crazy old card, super powerful, and decently expensive, because this, I think it's on the reserve list. Never going to be seeing a reprint, but a very cool card. Next up, yet another hidden gem with Ill-Gotten Gains, a source for 4 mana in mono black. Remove from the game, exile it. All players discard their hands, and each player puts 3 cards from their graveyard into their hand. This card can be risky, yes. It's basically everyone regrows 3 times. It's also a way to level the playing field in a way, and actually maybe even just put it in your favor, because chances are if you're casting this, yeah, you got some pretty good things in your graveyard that you want to get back. Maybe your deck revolves around certain things that you need to get back. And also, again, if there's that one blue player over there that maybe has like a Thought Vessel in play, and they're like, I have 20 cards in my hand, ha 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 ha, and you're like, discard your hand and you get 3. No! no! Everyone gets 3. So it's a way to even the playing field. And again, it's a way to recur a lot of things very, very, very quickly. Can't really be used and abused because, again, it exiles itself essentially, but it's a very effective card. Next up, Koskin Falls, a very strange card. Enchant World, that's how old this card is. It's like Enchant World instead of just Enchantment. 2 black, black. During your upkeep, tap target untapped creature control or bury it. That's also showing how old it is. No creature can attack you unless the controller pays additional 2 when another creature attacks. Hey, you know this is like the OG Ghostly Prison kind of thingy, essentially. This is, you know, Mono Black has that? What? Yeah, Mono Black has a Ghostly Prison type effect. Now, you have to tap an untapped creature control or you sacrifice it, so there is that requirement to it, but other than that, this is like, hey, Ghostly Prison essentially, but in black. So if you didn't know this was a thing, now you know it's a thing. If you need another Pillow Fort type effect and you've got $8 to spend on this one or you just want to proxy it, go for it. Moving on, Reprocess. This is a really cool old card. Sorcerer for 4 mana, sacrifice any artifacts, creatures, and/or lands, draw a card for each one sacrifice this way. You can draw a ton of cards with this. This is an absurd amount of cards to draw with the right deck out there. Again, 4 mana, draw, especially these days. Again, it doesn't say like non-token. So, hey, sacrifice treasures, sacrifice clues, sacrifice all those things. Also sacrifice creature tokens. Also, aristocrat style strategy. Sacrifice your creature fodder. Gain a ton of value from that, from not just, you know, the extra benefits you get from sacrificing those kinds of decks, but also just, yeah, pay 4 mana, draw like 10 plus probably. Have fun with that. And then, speaking of sacrificing things, finally in black, Phyrexian Plague Lord. Such a cool card. I love the art on this one. 4/4, Summon Carrier. No idea. I think it's Phyrexian Carrier. I don't know. Anyways, 3 black, black. Tap, sacrifice it. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. Sacrifice a creature. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. The beauty of seeing a card that has the text, sacrifice a creature, is just unrivaled. Being able to just freely sacrifice things is so much value. Again, for certain decks out there, especially aristocrat-style decks, being able to freely sacrifice things when you want to is great, especially when you get additional benefits from that. Like, hey, shrinking your opponent's creatures or taking your opponent's small creatures out. This makes blocks really hard for your opponents, and if you really need to panic, get rid of something that's a little bigger, like sacrifice a couple things, shrink that down, and then also tap sacrifice this to get rid of it. A fantastic free sacrifice out that many players sleep on. But now let's move on to red, and just have a little bit of chaos in here, shall we? Red players, right? Invasion plans, enchantment for 3 mana. Each creature blocks whenever able. What? On top of that, attacking players choose how each creature blocks. So this one is not for one with the faint of heart, because you're not in control of your destiny anymore with blocking, and everything blocks. It's kind of like the exact opposite of Bedlam, which is also in red, ironically. But it's like, hey, everyone swing, and you choose your blockers. And by doing that, you can be like, oh, you just made some really poor decisions blocking. You just lost your best creatures, or, hey, I got the right creatures through. It's a very, very, very chaotic effect. Make sure that you have other ways to maybe protect yourself. Maybe with Koskin Falls or like Ghostly Prison, whatever. Protect yourself in some ways, or just throw chaos on the board with something like this. Moving on. War Cadence. Kind of the opposite of War Tax, essentially. Champ for 2 and a red. Pay X and a red. Creatures can't block this turn unless controller pays X for each blocking creature. I guess not the opposite, but similar. Anyways. It's a card where, again, you can politic super hard with this card. You can say, hey, so you're going to be attacking, right? Yeah, I'm going to be attacking. If you don't attack me, I'll help you out. Because, see, I've got some blockers here, all right? And that's not going to go so well for you. You're not going to like that. What you might like, though, is going up and swing against our common enemy over there. That guy. We don't like him, right? Hey! Yeah, no, we don't like him. Anyways, so what we're going to do is you decide to attack that player, and I'm going to pay a certain amount where that player can't block, or can't block very efficiently at all. So, yeah, that's just one way you can politic with a card like this, which is absolutely lovely. Also, of course, you can just utilize it for your own gains anyways. If you're, like, swinging at somebody, you're like, oh, okay, how much mana do you have? Cool. All right, I'll pay a good amount. You're not going to be able to block. Get through on them. Next up, Aether Flash, a very weird old card. Enchant for 4 mana. Whenever a creature comes into play, 2 damage to that creature. Very simple, very effective. This destroys certain kinds of decks out there. If someone has like a tiny token deck and not enough anthems in play, they're like, oh, well, I guess I can't play my spell that makes 15 1/1 soldiers because they're all taken out. Darn. Or a, elf deck. Decks that are very low to the ground, they have a lot of low to the ground creatures. This just takes them out. Of course, it also helps you if you've got like enraged creatures too, so make sure you're keeping that in mind. And of course, if you got like damage doublers, damage triplers, no one's getting any creatures into play. So, a very weird, awesome card. And I kind of already mentioned earlier, actually, Bedlam. Enchantment for 2 red. It's just interesting that, you know, red can go chaotic on either end of the spectrum. Like, everything blocks or nothing blocks. Creatures cannot block. So, again, if you're just like, hey, you know it'd be great if everyone could just swing freely. Wouldn't that be great? And your friends are like, no, that'd be terrible. And you're like, battle them. Yeah, swing. Red things. So, yeah, being able to swing at your friends freely is lovely. Not worrying about blocks. Basically, everything is Rogue's Passage, including your opponent's things, though. So be careful with that, again, because you can't block their things. That being said, you either don't care in Chaos, yes, or you have backup plans for that. Speaking of backup plans, let's go into green and Elephant Grass. Yeah, Wizards really didn't know what they were doing with the whole can't attack thing, and they didn't really, like, find out that it probably should be in white with, like, you know, Windborn Muse and Ghostly Prison. I guess Arcane Laboratory was a thing, too, in blue. It's like every color had it except for red, I guess. Enchantment for a single green mana. Cumulative upkeep 1. Black creatures can't attack you. Non-black creatures can't attack you unless controller pays additional 2 for each attacking creature. Okay, so yes, this does have cumulative upkeep. So at some point, you're probably not going to be able to afford keeping it around. That being said, maybe you have a commander that can get this back, like a Muldrotha or something like that. Or just it's going to stay around long enough that it just saves you and you're going to be fine because you can build up other things to make sure that you're fine. Yeah, hey, being able to just play this and then all of a sudden black creatures can't attack you? Awesome. Sorry. Yeah, if you're playing a mono black deck, you're not coming with me at all. At all. And again, if you want to attack me with something that's not black, cool. Pay 2. Ghostly Prison, essentially. But again, this is just a 1 mana card. Absolutely crazy. And again, there's ways to reset it, you know, like blink it, bring it back, you know, bring it back to your hand, bring it back into play. Or, yeah, just pay that absurd amount of mana. You're in green. You know, you can pay the mana. Or just find other ways to get it back. It's a really cool old card. Next up, Nature's Chosen. Okay, this is a very, very weirdly worded old card from, I believe, Alliances. Champ creature for a single green mana, so it's an aura. Planet creature you control. Cool, got it. Pay 0, untap enchant creature. Use this ability only during your turn, only once each turn. Okay. Pay 0, tap enchant creature to untap target artifact creature or land. Use ability only if enchant creature is white, only once each turn. Okay, that's oddly specific and weird, but sure. So first of all, usually can ignore that second part. I mean, if you have this in a deck that utilizes that, cool. Otherwise, this is a free extra untap effect every single turn for one of your creatures. And if you have a deck that revolves around maybe, say, a commander like Garth that has a great tap effect, cool. You get 2 tap effects now every single turn thanks to this. Every single one of your turns, I should say. Moving on, Gaia's Touch, an enchantment for green. Very old card. You may put 1 additional land into play during each of your turns, but that land must be a basic forest. It's worded in such a weird way. You may sacrifice Gaia's Touch to add green in your mana pool. This ability displays an interrupt. Essentially, what this means is, hey, you get to play an extra land, but it has to be a forest. Cool. Also, you can sacrifice this for green if you need that mana back. This is a low to the ground ramp effect that is absurd. Again, especially in a deck that maybe is like green plus 1 other color, or of course just mono green. This is an absurdly quick ramp effect to allow you to get extra lands. And also, again, late game, if you're like, I don't really need to get extra lands to play, but I need like a little burst of mana. Cool, get that burst of mana. Next up, very, very weird card. Super weird card. $10 right now. Champ for 2 in a green, City of Solitude. Each player may play spells and abilities only during their turn. In green! Woo! Okay, so this is like Grand Abolisher, but in green on an enchantment. This is a way to essentially say, you know what? We don't like instants, really, okay? We just want everyone to play fair. So if I'm in combat, you can't do anything about that. So I'm just going to just swing freely and not worry about anything. Or if I'm going to combo off, also that too. So yeah, this can be a combo protector. I mean, if you're in a group that has a lot of combos, don't maybe play this unless you're sure that you can win the turn you get it down, because you might just protect an opponent's combo. It's a very weird old card from, I believe, Visions. Next up, Primal Order. Enchantment for 4 mana that some players are going to dread when this comes into play. During each player's upkeep, it's going to deal to that player an amount of damage. This is weirdly worded. There we go. I keep messing that up. To that player, an amount of damage equal to the number of non-basic lands they control. Basically, hey, how many non-basics do you have? Cool, take that much damage. It counts you as well, so keep that in mind. But again, if you're a, reasonable Magic player like me, no, just kidding. If you don't have a ton of non-basics in your decks, then you're fine. If you're all non-basics, you're going to get punished. You're not going to play this in a deck that is all non-basics, obviously. If you're playing this in a even 5-color deck, though, there are definitely builds out there. Like, many of my builds out there, like for 5-color, have like 20+ basic lands in them. You're going to be fine. You'll take like a couple of non-basic land damage, maybe even not any. And all of a sudden, your opponents are like, oh, every single upkeep I'm taking this much damage? What? Is this person playing like Group Slug Red? Why is this a green card? Who knows? It just is. Moving on, speaking of why is this a green card, Titania Song. Enchantment for 4 mana. Each non-creature artifact loses its abilities and is an artifact creature power chuff is equal to its casting cost. If it leaves play, the effect continues until end of turn. Okay, the last part's a bit weird. But essentially, hey, if your creatures, artifacts aren't creatures, now they are. Congratulations, you're welcome. And your opponents are like, I don't want that. I don't want my artifacts to be creatures. Why would you make my mana rocks into creatures? Why? Now I can't tap them right away, and also, like, well, a Wrath of God's gonna take them out. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly why, because I'm in green, so I can ramp with lands, but you can't. And like, no! Oh, also, your treasures are gone. Your clues are gone. Oh, all your token artifacts are gone. So yeah, you make artifacts a lot easier to remove. Funnily so. And you also, yeah, you do that. You take all those tokens. Keep in mind, though, obviously there are some decks you might actually want to utilize this for yourself. Like if you have like a bunch of artifacts you want to finish, for whatever reason, you can finish that way too in green. Weird. But now let's move on to Multicolor, and we've got some strange ones in this indeed. Altar of Bone, a sorcery for Selesnya colors, 2 mana. Sacrifice a creature to look through your library for a creature card, put that card in your hand. After showing it to other players, reshuffle your library afterwards. Worded in the strangest of ways, but this is back from, what, 95? Gosh, Ice Age? Is that what it was? Anyways, basically, this is Eldamri's Call at sorcery speed, sacrificing a creature. Now, many times that might be a downside, sacrifice a creature. And many times you might not care, because it's like, oh, okay, I'm in Selesnya, I probably have a bunch of like token creatures, sure, I'll just sacrifice a tiny one, whatever. It does not matter to me. I'll go get my best creature out of my deck for 2 mana. Yeah, that's huge. In other decks, it's like, oh yeah, I'm playing Aristocrats, so like sacrifice a creature is a good thing anyways. I'll sacrifice this, go get a key creature out of my deck. Yeah, cool. 2 mana, a crazy good tutor spell. Next up, Energy Arc. What a weird card. Instant for Azorius colors. Untap any number of target creatures. Those creatures may deal nor receive combat damage this turn. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this can be utilized in many different ways, essentially. This is basically just a mass untap effect for whatever you want. Again, any number of creatures. So it can be your opponent's creatures as well. So if like one player is swinging against another player and you want chaos to ensue, you're like, hey, this player over here thinks that they're like free to hit you. You don't like that, do you? They say no. And you're like, what will you do for me if I untap some creatures so you can block them? And that player's like, no. Then you're like, yeah. Okay. All right, cool. All right, sweet. Good deal. All right. Yeah, you can block. So yeah, being able to do this is fantastic. Again, for you blocking, it's like pseudo vigilance in a way. Your opponent's blocking, making deals. Obviously, again, like I mentioned earlier, like Garth, tap abilities on commanders, other things as well. It's huge for those too. If you have mana dorks out there, get that mana back again. And then yeah, just kind of like a fog effect too. If someone's like swinging it, you're like, I don't like that. Untap. That didn't happen, essentially. Moving on. This one's so weird. Breath Stealer's Crypt, an enchantment for 4 mana in Dimir. Whenever any player draws a card, they reveal it. If the card's a creature card, they pay 3 life or discard the card. So, if you are in a control type strategy that doesn't have a lot of creatures, have fun. Especially if you're in a meta with someone's like, I play Gruul. I like creatures. Good for you. I play dinosaurs. I like creatures. Good for you. Cool. I'm going to play this little card down here. And all of a sudden, you're going to get lightning bolted essentially every single time you draw a creature, unless you're okay with losing that creature. So it can be quite good. It's also just like good to know what people are drawing. This obviously can be a downside depending on your strategy. If it's like, yeah, I don't want people to know what I'm drawing. Keep that in mind. That being said, yeah, for the right deck, this card is pretty out there and pretty huge. Speaking of out there, Cadaverous Bloom. Get ready for this. Enchantment for 5 mana in Golgari. Choose a card in your hand and exile. Remove from the game. Add black, or green. Your mana pool. Place abilities mana source. What? This card existed back then? This is one of those where I saw, I was like, wait, that's a thing? Yeah, so this is basically just like, hey, every card in your hand's like a ritual if you really want it to be for free. Cool, why not? Have fun. Being able to exile cards out of your hand and just freely get mana is a very powerful thing. There are some very brutal and broken things that you can do with this crazy card from, I believe. Is that Mirage? Anyways, very cool, very old, very amazing card. Next up, though, let's go through some artifacts. Starting off with Thran Turbine. For 1 mana, you get an artifact. On your upkeep, you add colorless colors to your mana pool. This mana can't be spent to play spells. You might be thinking, like, okay, well, that's just kind of pointless. And, like, back in the day, it was much harder to work with because it's like, okay, I got 2 mana. Can't do anything with it. Oh, I hit myself for 2 because of mana burn. Mana burn's not a thing anymore unless you're playing against Thromok, which typically you're not. But if you are, ouch. But if you're playing this card, you've got outlets for it. You've got ways to use that mana. Yeah, you can't use it to cast spells, but of course you can activate abilities with that. And this is an incredible card for commanders that have activated abilities that have mana that you need to spend for that colorless mana, I should say. Not colorless mana specifically, but I guess definitely colorless mana too, like Endbringer, but also more so like generic mana. Moving on. Credit voucher. Hey, do you want a wheel in any color? Yes, please. Artifact for 2 pay 2 tap sacrifice. Go shuffle any number of cards from your hand in your library, then draw that many cards. Absurdly good, absurdly effective. Basically a wheel in waiting in an artifact deck. This can be very, very, very good for you. Next up, Dingus Staff. Again, taking advantage of not doing certain things, like playing creatures. Artifact for 4 mana. Whenever a creature is put in any graveyard from play, 2 damage to that creature's controller. Cool. So basically, again, if you're not in a creature-based strategy, you're like, yeah, I'm not really committing to the board. It's fine. Cool. You all do whatever you want to do with your creatures. Everyone's like, yeah, I've got 30 creatures. I've got 30 little token creatures. And you're like, Dingus Staff. Oh, no. Wrath. Game over. Yeah, this can be a great way to finish players off when they, again, think that they're in a very, 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 very controlling position. And then you turn it all around on them by saying, it's not good to have creatures anymore. 2 damage per creature is a lot. Speaking of a lot, Noetic Scales, a very strange card. Artifact for 4, during each player's upkeep, return to its owner's hand each creature the player controls with power greater than the number of cards in their hand. Okay, either you are playing really low to the ground creatures, or you are playing, again, no creatures. This is a great way to control the board and be like, hey, yeah, if you don't have a lot of cards in your hand, you're not keeping your creatures in play. Of course, you've got ways to maybe say, yeah, you should have less cards in your hand. Or, again, it can limit players from actually playing spells because they're like, oh, I need to keep these cards in my hand because if I don't, then I lose my creatures. So, yeah, this can be a very, very, very interesting card for the right deck out there. Finally, speaking of interesting and perhaps annoying, Politicizing. Oh my gosh. Artifact for 4. Whenever any creature comes into play, if there are 2 or more other creatures in play, set that creature aside, leaves play, put the creature into play under its own control. Basically, play a creature, exile it if there's 2 creatures in play, and just let it sit off to the side until it's ready to come in when those creatures are gone, essentially. Such a strange card. And again, like in a one-on-one format, that makes a bit more sense where it's like, ha, I got creatures in play. No, you have to wait because I got my creatures in play. Haha. But like in multiplayer, it's like, oh, yeah, there's like always going to be 2 creatures in play because like we're playing multiplayer. Oh, great. No one can play creatures. Or they can play creatures, but they go away until they come back. So it's a very strange card. Can work really well with ETBs as well, so keep that in mind too. A very, very weird old card. But now as this episode is coming to a close, I hope you enjoyed it. You know, exploring some of these old, maybe uncovered hidden gems that you haven't seen before. Some really weird, off-the-wall, crazy, and powerful effects in there. If you're interested in any of these cards, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.